What makes Earthbound good? Earthbound, or Mother 2 if you're wrong, is one of the earliest and best examples of what a cult classic RPG is. It was co-developed by Ape Inc. and HAL Laboratories under the direction of Shigesato Itoi and was released in 1994 by Nintendo. In its Western release, Earthbound was critically panned due to its so-called kiddie graphics and a commercial failure due to a market strategy that just plain stunk. Still, Earthbound gained a dedicated fan following, and while today it may not be the most well-known of series, as I'm sure the first time most of you ever heard of Earthbound was when you asked, who the hell is this kid in Smash? It is still almost universally loved by anybody who's played it, and Earthbound's influence can be seen in games like Lisa and Undertale. And on the subject of other games, I should tell you that I'm not going to discuss the other games in the Mother series, Mother 1 or 3, as neither of these games have been released outside of Japan, and seeing as I live nowhere near Japan, there is no legal way for me to obtain these games. And while I might not always have the strictest of adherence to these laws, I'm willing to do so if it supports my own laziness. But enough about this half-assed intro that I wrote in 20 minutes, let's get into the meat of this video and find out what makes Earthbound good. Earthbound plays like your standard JRPG, and by standard JRPG, I mean that the interface and combat system is almost copy and pasted from the Dragon Quest games, but this isn't a criticism. I'd rather a game take something that's good from another game than create something that's bad just for the sake of originality. My uncle was a carpenter, and he always had a saying. He'd say to me, "Stay out of my liquor cabinet, Jimmy." But I knew he meant, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And personally, I find it infuriating when games fail in aspects that other games have succeeded in, especially if those games are in the same series. It does have some of the issues that the Dragon Quest system brings with it. It's clunky because you have to open a menu to interact or do anything, and it still has that annoying mechanic where in order for a character to use or equip an item, it has to be in their own separate inventory. But other than a few minor gripes, Earthbound on a whole is a solidly built RPG. But Earthbound does have a few mechanics that are unique to it and are really good, and that I think are actually improvements on the RPG system. One of these mechanics is Earthbound's rolling damage numbers, meaning that when a character receives damage, their health gradually ticks down, instead of the norm of the damage being subtracted all at once. At first this might seem like nothing more than an aesthetic change, but it actually changes how combat works quite a bit. The most noticeable effect this has is when a character receives enough damage to kill them, the player still has the ability to recover from that damage and stave off death if they're fast enough with their healing. Not only is this a subtle way to make death slightly less annoying, as it has a tendency to be in most Dragon Quest games, it also creates a really interesting dynamic in the combat, especially in the later game, because when a character is hit by a killing blow, the slow, methodical pacing of the turn-based combat system becomes, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit! And it turns into a mad dash just to stay alive. And this makes combat way more intense and interesting. It's like if you're playing chess, and every time you lost a piece, you had to play a round of Russian roulette. I also really like how Earthbound handles its encounters, mainly because they're not unseen random encounters. All the encounters can be seen on the overworld, represented as enemies, and are activated when you touch them. There is a degree of randomness to the encounters though, as the enemies are spawned randomly as you enter the area, so it is possible that the player could be overswarmed, but it does have an interesting effect, since the player can just as easily use it in their favor to leave the area and despawn the enemies. Now just not having random encounters is enough to earn full marks for me for Earthbound, but Earthbound takes what it's able to do with its encounters even further. For example, if the player runs into an enemy from behind, they'll get the opportunity for a surprise attack. But inversely, if an enemy runs into the player from behind, they'll get an opportunity for a surprise attack. This gives an extra layer of meaning to the overworld sprites. Now there's an incentive to successfully sneaking up on enemies because there's such a great reward, and a risk to running away from them because there's such a penalty for failure. And if you're really over-leveled or have beaten the boss of the area, the enemies will actually run away from you. This makes backtracking painless and keeps the player from fighting meaningless battles and keeps them from being overleveled, which keeps the game in that nice Goldilocks zone of difficulty. Something else that actually took me a while to notice, but the enemies on the overworld have a one-to-one correspondence to the enemies in battle. In most RPGs that have pre-existing encounters like this, one enemy on the overworld translates to an entire party in battle, but in Earthbound, one enemy on the overworld means one enemy in battle, and the type of enemy you see will be the type of enemy that you fight. Not only does this let you know exactly what you'll fight ahead of time, but it also allows the player to ambush one enemy at a time, rather than facing an entire party at once. But easily my favorite mechanic in Earthbound is when you run into something that's so underleveled compared to you that you just win in one turn. Here's what happens. Yeah, that's right, the battle ends instantly. No, it ends before it even begins. The game is basically saying, nah man, I got this one. You go on ahead, you got better shit to do. It's such an awesome mechanic, and it's a tragedy that more games don't have something like it. I know it might seem like a bad idea to intentionally shorten the length of your game, and this is admittedly a pretty simple mechanic compared to the other ones that I've discussed, but it's just so awesome that it's hard not to love this mechanic. Now that's all there really is to Earthbound that's worth mentioning in terms of gameplay mechanics, but that is not all there is to talk about Earthbound. In fact, I haven't even touched on the best part about Earthbound, its story, or rather the style and tone in which that story is told and how the game is presented to the player. Earthbound oozes style and charm out of every orifice. Its defining features that the whole game has a sense of quirky, random, childlike humor to it, and how imaginative it is compared to other games in the RPG genre. The graphics are so bright and colorful that the whole game looks like a coloring book. The music is upbeat and happy, and it seems like the most used instruments are banjos and bongos. Most of the enemies look like they could come straight out of a Saturday morning cartoon. The dialogue is all either goofy, random humor or spot-on pop culture references thanks to the amazing work of the localization team. The items are fast food merchandise and bottle rockets, and the equipment are baseball bats and frying pans, not what you expect to find in your JRPGs. The whole game is set in a modern-day satirized America, and as a side note, I personally find it really interesting that one of the most imaginative RPGs is set in one of the most least fantastical settings ever. This lighthearted and childlike tone makes sense since one of Earthbound's major themes is childhood, but there's also another side to that tone, one that can be darker than what you'd expect to find in a kid's game. Occasionally, the happy colors will suddenly be inverted and the music will be replaced with an unnerving synthesizer. Some of the enemies will become hideous monstrosities or eldritch abominations or worse, and often you'll witness some really messed up events. Now, if you think these two elements of the tone really clash against each other, well, that's exactly why Earthbound puts them together. A big part of why Earthbound's style works so well is because it's constantly juxtaposing the lighthearted elements of the story to the grimmer, more twisted elements of it. This juxtaposition makes both sides accentuate the other one. The lighthearted side becomes even more happy and memorable with more emotional weight when compared to the darker side, and the grimmer side of the story is all the more jarring and frightening when it's put next to the lighter one. Probably the biggest and best example of this is the final portions of the game. After finally acquiring the 8 melodies, you have the power to save the world, so you head off to confront Gyges, and you're transported from the happy environment and upbeat music of Saturn Valley to this really alien place with really weird music, and then you find out that you have to go back in time, and to do so your brains have to be transplanted into robots, and you're transported to an even stranger place with even scarier music, and you're fighting the toughest enemies in the game, and it's really hard, but you have to keep going because everybody's counting on you to do it. So you go in this creepy wall vagina and you're walking on this Oregon trail, and then your best friend's there and he's a giant creepy spider now, and there's this devil machine with your face on it, and he releases an ancient cosmic horror. And oh my god, we're all gonna die, he's gonna kill us all, I should've leveled up more, someone for the love of God help us! And then you go back home and look at a photo album with your mom. I don't think it's a mistake that one of the most frightening sequences in all of gaming and one of the most heartwarming are put right next to each other. The final battle is terrifying on its own, but it's made even more shocking because you didn't expect something like this from this game. And the ending sequence is even more heartwarming because it came right after this. And the entire game is full of moments like this, where the game is deliberately placing contrasting elements together, and unexpected juxtapositions such as these are a common element in the surrealistic art style. Surrealism is a term that's often brought up when describing Earthbound, and rightly so, since it's a very accurate description of the style of Earthbound. Surrealism was an artistic movement in the 1920s that was heavily inspired by the works of Sigmund Freud on the ideas of the unconscious mind. Its aim was to use illogical scenes and unconventional ideas to express the unconscious mind, so Earthbound fits right into surrealism, especially when you consider that surrealism was also a revolutionary movement that sought to change what people thought art should be, and to use art as the ultimate way to rebel against reality itself. Not only does the sound metal as fuck, but it's also displayed in Earthbound, since Earthbound is an intentional departure from the tropes and cliches of the RPG genre. Earthbound's surreal style and tone works to enforce one of the game's major themes, childhood, by giving the player a sense that they're actually seeing this world through the eyes of a child, and creating a very accurate feeling of what it's like to be a child. Most depictions of childhood in media would want us to think that childhood is always candy, rainbows, and happiness. And while childhood can be that, it's not accurate to say that it can only be that. Childhood is also frightening new experiences, being scared by the unknown, and being confronted with things we don't understand. While Earthbound may be a game all about childhood, it definitely at times has some pretty heavy subject matter like domestic violence, gang violence, police brutality, cults, kidnapping, the Klan, vagina symbolism, feticide, mutilation, more vagina symbolism, vehicular manslaughter, manual vehicle slaughter, substance abuse, a zombie apocalypse, rape? So this game has some pretty messed up stuff in it. Why? Because there's some pretty messed up stuff in the real world. Being a kid doesn't stop you from seeing it. It can put you in an environment where you're less likely to see it, and it can change your perspective or understanding of what you're seeing, but it doesn't stop you from seeing it. That's how Earthbound can create a believable experience of being a child, by creating a believable world. Earthbound doesn't hold back from showing you the ugly parts of life, and it sometimes presents those parts as though it's being seen by a child who's not emotionally mature enough to process what they're seeing. Shigesato Itoi said that he based the Mother games off his own experiences growing up. The name of the series, Mother, comes from the fact that Itoi grew up without a father, and famously the disturbing final battle of Earthbound was inspired by Itoi's childhood experience of seeing what he thought was a rape scene in a movie and his reaction to it. Earthbound being the raw depiction of childhood that it is, and also being a celebration of childhood, is why I think the game resonates with so many people, because everyone was a child at some point, unless you're some weird clone baby. The whole game has a sense of nostalgia to it, not because it's something from your childhood, but because it's something that evokes the feeling of being a child. I mean, the first time I ever played Earthbound was when I was 18, but the whole time I was playing it, I couldn't help but remember my own experiences as a child. Earthbound is amazing because it's able to create an emotional connection with the player through one of the most fundamental human experiences there is. And that's not something that most games can say they're able to do. I kind of view Earthbound like an artist who was never fully appreciated during their time because their ideas and style didn't fit into the norms and conventions of their time, like Emily Dickinson or Van Gogh, only for people to later come back and realize just how amazing and significant their work was. Earthbound's less than stellar release is probably why Mother 1 took so long to get a virtual release, and why Mother 3 may never get one. And I'm sure there's some moral in there about not judging a book by its cover, or giving new things a chance, or some other dumb thing like that, but what do I know? I'm just a stupid guy on the internet. Hey, looks like the video's over. Thanks for making it through the entire way without dying, I guess. If you have your own thoughts on Earthbound, or any responses to anything I've said, or thoughts on how I conveyed my thoughts, well then please tell me. Comments, criticism, and discussion are always welcomed. And if you like this video and want to see something more like it, well, you're in luck because I made another video like this where I talk about Pokemon. It's alright. I mean, you know, there's worse ways to waste 20 minutes. I mean, you already watched this one, so, you know, what do you got to lose, really? No, I don't really. I'm not really good at making end slates like these, I guess. I don't know. That's it, I guess. Okay, bye. I'm gonna turn the recording off.